Yo, welcome to another episode of The Boyd. Still trying to work out some things. Crazy episode today, partly because of some crazy technical difficulties. And so we had, as those familiar with the show know, this is a live show, and we try to, you know, at least start on time, but crazy stuff's happening. All right, so I don't know what's going on with this audio situation, but I can either be 100% on this. I don't know, some crazy technical difficulties. All right, let me just get this. Everything's tough. So here we are, another week, another episode of The Boyd. Please give me feedback on how it sounds. I think somebody who was I can't remember his name. Jumped on, left a comment saying it was the sound was too low. So hopefully, it's up a little bit higher now for you. Let me know if it's not high enough. But here we go. Okay, so welcome again to the Boyd live show. Typically, we try to get as many people on board as we can. This is a fellowship of truth. And how are we going to see how are we going to find the truth if we don't work together? This isn't about me and my opinion about everything per se. I mean, I have my opinions, and so whatever my opinions are and my feelings and whatever things that I have in my mind, I guess my challenge is to justify those and to try to make them make sense, I guess. And pardon me while I don't know, some things. So when I launched the show today, some crazy things happened. For some reason, like none of the computer sounds were coming through, and it was just like music and stuff, just no audio. It's crazy. I can have the same exact setup, same exact equipment as last week, and everything was fine. And now, this week, here I am trying to have a damn show, and my audio doesn't work. Like, I don't get it. And it's not even a equipment issue. It's really a software issue. And if it is an equipment issue, it's because of the software and the equipment. Anyway, all right. So today, modern mayhem. Part of what I wanted to cover today is actually a video by School of Life. Some of you guys might have heard of them. They've got like millions of subscribers, so it wouldn't surprise me if you have heard of them before. I would check the link in the description for the link to the video I'm about to feature. And the name of the video, and by the way, I'm going to, just so you don't get mad in advance, I'm going to be stopping this video because I'm going to try to be using it under Creative Commons. So we are going to be critiquing some of the things. The big thing that I wanted to get at with this video was that sort of their take on some. They make a pretty decent platform for not platform, but like sort of give a good launch point to discuss some of the issues that I brought up in the title, Modern Mayhem. The video is entitled "The Modern World." All right, so stand by. Excuse me. How the Modern World Makes Us Mentally Ill is really what it's called. Alright, so stand by. I'm still making this thing work. So hopefully everyone's having an awesome time. I know it's a crazy time out there, with pandemics going on and blah blah. But we got to make do with it. Wu Wei, become the pandemic, I guess. Not really. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and play it, and I'll jump in and make some comments here and there. Because, like I said, I don't 100% jive with everything that they're talking about, but my computer's making that extra noise. I want to make sure nothing's going nuts here. All right, here we go. Stand by. See, remember these audio problems? God, it's going to rear its head. All right, let's get through these audio problems. But I want to talk about this stuff, so I think this will be a good start for us. All right, here we go. The School of Life. How the modern world makes us mentally ill.
It's good. Cars are reliable. We can so easily keep in touch from Mexico with our grandmother in Scotland. It's also powerfully and tragically geared to causing a high background level of anxiety and widespread low-level depression. There are 6 particular features of modernity that have this psychologically disturbing effect. Each one has a potential cure, which we will only collectively put into action when we know more about the disease in question. Here are the 6.
So for those of you that are on live, please let me know if the audio needs adjusting or anything like that. Also, please make sure to jump in on the live chat and give your take on some things. So here, sorry, I stopped it in the middle of this monkey, but here we go.
Make it if they have the talent and energy. The downside of this ostensibly liberating and beautiful idea is that any perceived lack of success is taken to be, not as in the past, an accident or misfortune, but as a sure sign of a lack of talent or laziness. If those at the top deserve all their success, then those at the bottom must surely deserve all their failure. A society that thinks of itself as meritocratic turns poverty from a problem to evidence of damnation, and those who have failed from unfortunates to losers. The cure is a strong, culturally endorsed belief in 2 big ideas. Luck, which says success doesn't just depend on talent and effort, and tragedy, which says good, decent people can fail and deserve compassion rather than contempt. 2. Individualism. An individualistic society preaches that the individual and their achievements are everything, and that everyone is capable of a special destiny. It's not the community that matters, the group is for no-hopers. To be ordinary is regarded as a curse. The result is that the very thing that most of us will end up being, statistically speaking, is associated with freakish failure. The cure is a cult of the good, ordinary life, and proper appreciation of the pleasures.
I wanted to stop here for just a brief moment because, and one of the main reasons is because of the whole libertarian, at least the American-style U.S. libertarian, Ayn Randian group of people out there, like your Rand Pauls, Ron Paul, your who else? Paul Ryan. Trump says he's quoted Fountainhead, or at least mentioned it. I was surprised. Someone must have read it to him. But this philosophy embraces selfishness. Literally, Ayn Rand wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness, and she promotes that. This is a sort of overarching premise within her book, and this is to some degree the individualism that we're seeing, or one reason why there's this push for that type of narrative, and that somehow that somehow there's this calculus that directly quantifies your value with cash. So the notion that your societal value is reflected in the amount of cash that you're able to acquire, or the quote-unquote financial success that you're able to achieve, hold on one second. So that is directly supposed to be correlated, right? It's well, it's but the cause there should be some causation, I guess. There is a direct causation in the narrative that your talent and ability equal directly your monetary or financial reward. Um, in the value of to society is a lot of times the premise that's brought up. Um, so my argument becomes like if I volunteer my time to build homes for the homeless and I have nothing to show for that other than the homes for the homeless, no capacity to exert power through my financial means, but someone is, you know, I would be shown in general less um, in this society, less reward and or any kind of benefit really, other than the internal feeling of, or maybe if I was able to receive some kind of reciprocity from the folks that I helped with the houses, maybe. But for instance, in this frame of logic, a volunteer who houses thousands of homeless before they die is worth less per financial equation is worth less to society than someone who, say, traffics in children and makes millions of dollars, right? Obviously, they are doing much more financially, doing much better financially. Who is worth more, right? So this argument becomes sort of a pretty flaccid argument, in my opinion. Um, let's see. Okay, so by the way, there is a bit of a delay, so I want to let you know. So when I get to your chat stuff, it might take a second. So hopefully the video volume ended up going up enough. Do I need it more? Let me know, and I will turn it on up some more for you. Wait a minute. Let's see. Okay, so by the way, there is a bit of a delay, so I want to let you know. Oh my god, I think I just figured out my audio problem. So hopefully the video volume. That's actually really cool. Okay, so hopefully that is the case. Let me know. All right, so stand by. I'm really sorry. Let me check something real quick because I really would rather do this the normal way. I hope this is how. Man, I just screwed up all sorts of settings. Okay. I think we're back to normal mode, sort of. Okay. I don't know anymore. Where were we? Okay, let's go back to the video and talk about that. So put your Well, let me back up for a second. Did you guys miss anything about the video? I can rewind some of it. Basically, it's talking about individualism and this in the sense of being an individual and individual accomplishment versus working together with the group. And this also this notion that it is everyone's goal to aspire to the top, which of course is a irrational goal. Obviously, the top has the diminishing number in a hierarchical system. We can't all be the top, and what it does is also obfuscate what I believe is true human nature, which is to be a follower. To be honest with you, right? Because in a communal system, let's just face it, didn't we? How do you say? I guess you know if we look at our history as a species, we are a communal species, right? We're a pack species. Generally, through our history, it's been to a large degree a hierarchical system, and in fact, I talk about some of the hierarchical sort of the implications of that in a previous video, especially the implications of the dynamic between men and women, male and female, that the era of the lion, where the brute physical force of the male was able to overpower the female, and exert his will, and there that became the system. And now that we're in a different era where that's not, physical. Obviously, the biological, physical attributes haven't really changed. Men are still obviously stronger than women and can manhandle, quote unquote, no pun intended, manhandle them, etc. Um, it is not a basis of power now, right? You can't just go grab Mary by the hair and take her to Lothar's cave or whatever, and then do your thing. Or Lothar can't take him to her to the cave or whatever, as it may have been in some sense in the past. And now, of course, even up until recent times, I mean, relative recent times, 100 years ago, or even not even that long, women were in fact, specifically placed in a subservient role. Um, and largely, I would assume, largely because of physical attributes not being able to physically overpower men. So that's just was the rule. We sort of lived in this, paradigm, or this transitional phase, I guess, between the rule of the jungle, quote unquote, and the rule of law, I guess. And now we're to a point where our society, our species has evolved beyond simple physical attributes, right? So we can actually come up with this notion that no, you can't overpower Mary and take her into the cave. No, you cannot, kill her children from another previous man so that your biological information goes forward and his doesn't. Like that's not, we don't do that thing anymore, right? Maybe once, right? And it happens in nature, whatever, rule of the jungle. And now we don't. Yes, Esteban, I will 100% play the video from the beginning. School of Life, by the way, guys, great channel. They've got a lot of really cool videos. I don't agree with everything, but we don't have to agree with everything as long as we're critical and think about what it is we agree with and what we don't. Now, how's my audio on the mic? And then when I'm going to start the video again, let me know if the audio is coming in good for you guys, because it sounds like super loud from my end. But I'm sure my audio is totally effed up right now because I was in panic mode, and it was, of course, such a simple, stupid solution that I didn't even know. I won't even go into it. All right, so just right, we just got to go with the flow. Why fret about it? Okay, here we go. New video. Bam. Oh, I don't hear anything. Oh, no, maybe we're still having audio problems. Yes, we have to be having. Okay, hold on. This will work. This will work. This will work. All right. So what's going on here? Why do I not have volume? All this stuff. Okay. Superfan Chris, what is up? You are not too late. All right. So why is now suddenly my volume's not working again? So very strange. I don't know. I have this really bad feeling that if I mess with this and then the audio does come back on. Now what? Why? Okay. I don't know what's happening now. I think we're having the same problem. All right, so let me now that I've fixed one audio. Okay.
and those who have failed from unfortunates to losers.
Yeah, here it
The
goes.
cure
It's probably
is a
really
strong,
loud.
culturally endorsed belief in two big ideas.
I think we're having the same problem. All right, so let me now that I've fixed one audio. Okay, sorry guys. OMG. I need someone to help me with this Sunday. All right, here we go. This is try 1 million.
In many ways. Dentistry is good, cars are reliable. We can so easily keep in touch from Mexico with our grandmother in Scotland. But it's also powerful in many ways. The modern world is wonderful in many ways. Dentistry is good, cars are reliable. We can so easily keep in touch from Mexico with our grandmother in Scotland. But it's also powerfully and tragically geared to causing a high background level of anxiety and widespread low-level depression. There are 6 particular features of modernity that have this psychologically disturbing effect. Each one has a potential cure, which we will only collectively put into action when we know more about the disease in question. Here are the 6. 1. Meritocracy. Our societies tell us that everyone is free to make it if they have the talent and energy. The downside of this ostensibly liberating and beautiful idea is that any perceived lack of success is taken to be, not as in the past, an accident or misfortune, but as a sure sign of a lack of talent or laziness. If those at the top deserve all their success, then those at the bottom must surely deserve all their failure. A society that thinks of itself as meritocratic turns poverty from a problem to evidence of damnation, and those who have failed from unfortunates to losers. The cure is a strong, culturally endorsed belief in 2 big ideas. Luck, which says success doesn't just depend on talent and effort, and tragedy, which says good, decent people can fail and deserve compassion rather than contempt. 2. Individualism. An individualistic society preaches that the individual and their achievements are everything, and that everyone is capable of a special destiny. It's not the community that matters, the group is for no-hopers. To be...
Okay, so hold on. I sort of wanted to talk about that. We talked about the individualism thing. I sort of jumped ahead a little bit with the individualism thing. What was I gonna say? What was that first one? Oh, right. So both of the that if you didn't get to success, it must have been because you are lazy or you have some kind of fault with you. It can't be circumstances within material reality. It has to be, because everybody has the potential to become Kanye West or something. All right, let's continue on.
Ordinary is regarded as a curse. The result is that the very thing that most of us will end up being, statistically speaking, is associated with freakish failure. The cure is a cult of the good, ordinary life and proper appreciation of the pleasures and quiet heroism of the everyday. 3. Secularism. Secular societies cease to believe in anything that is bigger than or beyond themselves.
So this is where I take sort of issue with the video, or with these sets of topics. I can sort of see to some degree where they're going with this, but let's watch it and then I'll. The notion, I've heard this before, the notion that people believe in a deity or God or something because they want to believe in something bigger, quote unquote, bigger than themselves. And I just don't understand the amount of, I don't understand I don't know if the word is arrogance or self-absorption or hubris maybe, that in order to believe in that something bigger than yourself exists. You have to believe in an omniscient, omnipowerful, omnipresent God. Like that nature isn't big enough to be bigger than you. Then that the universe isn't big enough to be bigger than you. That society isn't big enough to be bigger than you. That there aren't things that are big enough. I mean, it's you know, does a bucket of water think that the ocean isn't bigger than itself? You know, like it is part of, it could be part of it. It is part, you're part of something bigger than yourself already. So to have to think that the only thing bigger than yourself is a omniscient, omnipotent being, to me that just is beyond. I don't understand it. I mean, maybe someone has a better explanation. I think the real explanation is that it's another way of saying bigger than you. Not it's not that I'm looking for something bigger than me. It's that something's bigger than you or any of your authorities on earth or anywhere. There is an ultimate higher power that overrides whatever your opinion is, because I believe in that thing, and that grounds me in, I guess, my own, I don't know, the belief system that makes me feel better, I guess. I don't know. Maybe someone can dig into that a little bit more. So that's where some of my issue comes. In the end, when they turn it around at the end, it sort of, I guess, makes a little bit more sense. Because, I mean, you could look at, you know, the, like Tao Te Ching, right? The Tao teachings, for instance, the Tao, right? It's not like God, or it's like sitting there judging you or watching you masturbate or something. It's like the Tao is just the way of things, the way of being. It's just the universe. It's just the flow of the Tao is the Tetris blocks coming to you through life. That is Tao, and you must own you. All you can do is flow with those blocks. You can manipulate those blocks as for as long as you have time to manipulate them. You can do what you can, and then you have to go with the flow. And panicking isn't going to change the Tetris blocks. It's not going to slow them down. It's not going to speed them up. It's, you know, and maybe it does get harder, right? Obviously in Tetris, things get harder and harder. It goes faster and faster, right? And sometimes, you know, you fail at a board or whatever, and sometimes you just keep on racking points. So life is a little bit like that, and Lao Tzu talks about a lot of in the Tao Te Ching or something. I don't speak Chinese, so I know I'm butchering that. You know, speaks a lot of this idea that of emptiness, of nothingness being the most powerful, I guess, to having the most, because in the emptiness is the potential, and to seek to fill the emptiness leaves you open to manipulation. That's why so many people that are seeking an answer, seeking spirituality, seeking something, succumb to con artists and manipulators so easily, because they're seeking to fill a void. Lao Tzu would say that's almost like looking for a Tetris block. Like, I really need that long 4 block, whatever, line, so I can make this one like chunk of points. But it's like, it doesn't matter how much you want the 4 blocks. I mean, maybe you think you can manipulate it with your mind, because your mind can you know, manipulate the random block generator in the Tetris programming. Damn it, why do I keep hitting this? But you know, in reality, there's nothing you could do, right? But to accept sort of the flow of fate and work within the bounds of the of what you got. All right, so let's jump on to this next section. I'm going to look at the comments real quick to see what else we got. Let's see. Nothing wrong. Okay, so Michael W. Not if you see God as a verb first, then living in relationship. God as a verb first. And sure, I guess that's one way to use whatever philosophy. I guess. I mean, thinking God as a verb is maybe something that I'm not really too familiar with. So maybe that could work for something. All right. So Clay, thank you for tuning in, Clay. By the way, says that's a very good perspective. Hadn't thought about it like that before. I don't know. Um, okay. What are you talking about, Clay? Are you talking about the video or the um, I don't know, or Michael's point or another point? All right, so Michael W says, stole it from Jesus, lol. He summed, okay, so maybe that's what he's talking. Summed up the entire Hebrew Bible with love God and love your neighbor as yourself. The trick hidden in plain sight is that you'll fulfill the first by doing the second. Sure, indeed. Or you could just do the second, right? I mean, the first part, it honestly, it doesn't really, it doesn't really matter, right? It's like loving the Tetris random block generator. It it's you can love it, go for it. I mean, it's not going to change the blocks that come to you. You still have to deal with them, and if loving that random block generator makes you feel more capable of dealing with the blocks that come to you, then whatever coping mechanism you use, then great. That works great. But at the same time, that isn't necessarily a requisite. It's an interesting thing too that I think people don't realize is when they're reading the Bible and looking to see God's like I guess God's word. That's all supposedly God's word, right? And out of God's word, what can we glean from God's word? The interesting thing about that is, people talk about going to the Bible like they're going into this expedition to see what new discoveries, what they will find in the Bible, or that will come to them, right? That will jump out and sort of present themselves. And the reality is, you have to go into this jungle and look for it. It's like more like a word search than an actual teaching tool, if that makes sense. I mean, sure, word searches can be teaching tools, but why? Because you know what words to look for already. You already know what you're looking for when you go to find it. You see what I'm saying? So you don't need it if you already know what you're looking for. It doesn't make sense to go to a place to look for a thing that you're already looking for, and try to trudge it around. I guess, I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's like losing your car keys and then just rummaging through a drawer full of keys, just in the hopes that you'll find your car keys in there. But there's a bunch of keys, but is it the right one for you? Well, I don't know until I see if it's the one I'm looking for. You already know what you're looking for. You see what I mean? So you could just stick with what you are already looking for and contemplate that. Now, great, there might be some passages that help to sort of, I guess, bring metaphor and clarity. Sure, okay, great. But when people tell me that there's all these special lessons to be taught that are taught in the Bible, it doesn't really sit well with me, because really you're looking at it like, because there's a lot of stuff in there you have to sift through. There's a lot of non-words in the word search. It's like, that's not a word, and that's not a word either. So you can't just like get points for that, right? That doesn't count. Well, that's still there. So if you don't know that that's not a word, right, it's still there. So you could think certain things are words and play them, if that makes sense, right? So we've seen a lot of bastardization, quote unquote, of the Bible. The Bible's been used to justify slavery, anti-women suffrage, whatever. I mean, so many things, right? Because in the word search, you can find all sorts of stuff, and even sometimes words that weren't really supposed to be there that just happened to be generated, right? And now suddenly those are lessons that we should be pushing because it existed in the word search, if that makes sense. All right, so Michael W., that's the key. Do the second. Sorry, pertaining to your point on how our own perspective on how God has to be all-powerful, as if other life in the galaxy weren't enough, or anything. I mean, nature. The fact that I don't know, just everything. You are a piece in a massive fabric of the tapestry of society. So you're already part of something gigantic, bigger than you. Hell, your family's really already bigger than you. I mean, numerically, but also everything. I mean, really, to live, especially I would think to live the life of supposedly of the in the Word of God or whatever Michael was talking about, you would automatically, right, think of yourself in service, smaller, and that everything is bigger than you, right? So it's just this crazy hubris. I don't understand. I think there's a lot that ties into that too. But I don't know. Honestly, though, I still go back to this idea of the ultimate authority, that someone wants to be able to like pull out this sword and say, "Oh no, I got the spirit on my side," or "I got the special words that on the word search it said, look, James is the best. Look, I circled it, right? And that's why you should follow me, because it said." And I don't know. Anyway, Clay says, "I think a lot of people just feel lost without purpose and look to religion as more of an identity." I agree. I think there's an alternative to that, though. I think we should look to fellowship. I think we should realize that we are not only it's sort of a universe in of ourselves, but we are part of this reality that's, I mean, it's pretty wild. Here we are in existence right now. I don't know. That is a gift, and it doesn't seem like it. We take it for granted a lot of times, but if you just really think about the reality of the fact, I mean, here we are fellowshipping, right? Really, a group of us together, not in a Zoom meeting or anything, but we're all together. We're communicating. We're talking about some pretty major concepts, and this type of gathering can probably be sort of part of a key to finding that greater meaning. The fact that we are, if we lean on our biology even, it's trying to tell us that we need to come together, that we need to communicate, that really fellowship between us all is what's needed, and to look towards this sort of nebulous idea of a deity or some character of some sort, it to me is a deflection from facing the realities of what, I mean, I guess facing material reality is really what I'm getting at. All right, so let's get back to the video. A couple more. Oh, we got some more comments. All right, so here we go. Superfan Chris says, looking for fellowship. Yes, exactly. Chris and I talk a lot about this, and so yeah, we've discussed this notion that there's a lot of people out there that have grown up in church, that have gone to church, and have sort of felt out of place. It's funny. I was talking to it felt out of place. But one thing that they did enjoy was were the moments before church where they got to meet and talk to everybody, and the moments after church where they had donuts and coffee and stood around and caught up with their neighbors. Right? This fellowship is really what is real and what is really needed. The rest of it's pomp and circumstance. It's ritual. It's stuff you're familiar with. It's neat, whatever. You could do all that same. We could sing Cyndi Lauper songs and give each other hugs and talk about social events or social issues And I think that would not only, number one, be better for society, number two, it would be something that would be better for our mental health. And number three, we would actually talk about societal issues, and instead of sort of kicking the can towards a deity or a heavenly figure to sort it out for us, which obviously never happens. And the people in power love when you say stuff like that because they get to move the Ouija board and you think it's Satan, right? Um, yes, okay. Oh, yes, video. Sorry, I'm going off on this tangent. All right, let me transition this back. One of these days, we're going to have a live studio editor person.
Religions used to perform the useful service of keeping our petty ways and status battles in perspective. But now there is nothing to awe or relativize humans whose triumphs and mishaps end up feeling like the be-all and end-all. A cure would involve regularly using sources of transcendence to generate a benign, relativizing perspective on our personal sorrows. Music, the stars at night, the vast spaces of the desert or the ocean would humble us all in consoling ways. 4. Romanticism. The philosophy of Romanticism tells us that each of
Okay, so yeah, what did he say about the hold on. I was messing with the audio.
music, the stars at night,
Yes,
the vast
okay.
spaces of the desert or the ocean
There's all these
would humble
things
us all in
that
consoling.
aren't necessarily religion, that or like God based or something, you know, where there's some command and control deity thing, anthropomorphized being of some sort that is in control of doing things and judging and making sure that you have you fit the correct protocols of life. I mean, when we start talking about this like the protocol of which you're supposed to live and the judgment therein, it just seems like, well, number one, it seems like an administrative nightmare. But at the same time, it's just, I mean, okay, omnipotent, omniscient, all of these things, but the fact that I mean, it's really what, if we really think about it, um, it's a control narrative, right? So that you fit within the box of behavior. Um, at the end of the day. All right, let's see if we had any before we transition on to the next one. Let's see here. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so let's go see what else is. Romanticism.
Romanticism. The philosophy of Romanticism tells us that each of us has one very special person out there who can make us completely happy. Yet, mostly, we have to settle for moderately bearable relationships with someone who is very nice in a few ways and pretty difficult in many others. It feels like a disaster in comparison with our original huge hopes. The cure is to realize that we didn't go wrong. We were just encouraged to believe in a very improbable dream. Instead, we should build up our ambitions around friendship and non-sexual love. 5. The media. The media has immense...
Okay, so yeah, romanticism. I think that is part of it. I think that's probably a nice way to put that. I think there's, oh man. Wait, hold on. Did I have you guys on the I don't remember when I had, if I had the video playing or me playing. But anyway, romanticism. I don't know that. Do you guys feel like people really expect that their relationships are going to be perfect and whatnot? I don't know that that's the case. Maybe there's a perception through media or I mean through I don't know, some mass media, I guess through TV shows or movies or whatever, that relationships are going to be perfect or etc. I don't know that people necessarily expect that. I think there is something though that goes along with that notion, sort of, but it's a little bit more superficial. I think some of I think we could tie the incel movement. I don't know if you guys know about the incel people, the involuntary celibate guys, mainly guys. These are mainly guys that um, just don't know their way around women. But most of the time, they're very misogynistic. They feel that men are superior, and also that they have some type of right to the to the desires of the opposite sex. In fact, the sort of the king rat of the incels at this point is Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Jordan Peterson. He's a philosopher, not a philosopher, psychology teacher, I believe, professor, excuse me, psychology professor at in Canada. And he was in trouble. He didn't get in trouble, but he was in some hot water about some crap. But one of the things, and it sort of highlighted a lot of his views, and one of the things that he had mentioned was this notion of forced monogamy. Because one of the things, here, I'll let you in on some incel language. One of the things that incels refer to are chads. I think it's Chad and Becky. Is it Becky? I don't remember. There's a girl name for this as well. The Chad is the guy, the good-looking guy that just happens to have. They really dig a lot into eugenics and genetics. So there's a lot of study of skull structure, jawline structure, facial structure, and some other physical attributes that sort of define what the female sex wants versus whatever these incel guys, probably the attributes that fit them. Now some of these guys, they look like normal guys, but they have just zero social skills, and they just sort of expect, because in the past, in this romanticized past that they have of men, especially white men, having sort of power, status, regardless of looks, regardless of cash or anything, that you just would happen to be a white male, I guess, and you could get any girl you fancy. And in fact, they really place a high emphasis on level of level of attractiveness. Like they feel like sometimes, like they'll lament that a hot chick, a Becky or some hot Becky, is with this non-Chad, and that's like, whoa, he must have a lot of money or something, right? Or that Becky is with Chad, and that's just the norm, and that she will always be there, and I don't have the cranial structure, and so fuck Becky and fuck all women, and it becomes this really virulent society. So I mean, I think that's one side of a slippery slope within this sort of grab bag that the School of Life has sort of put under romanticism, and of course, women have. Maybe I guess you could look at, depending on. I think that again it goes back to what we talked about before. If we look at Lao Tzu, and I'm barely walking at all talking about the Tao and Tao Te Ching or Lao Tzu's teachings or whatever. But this goes back to one of the things that he says, and one of my favorite lines of Lao Tzu is that the master never seeks fulfillment. Right? So when we see the incels, when we see girls that are going crazy because they're trying to fulfill some level of beauty or attain something, whatever they're trying to attain, right? They go through all the problems that come through the seeking of this fulfillment. If they were to just simply let the Tao be, let the Tetris blocks flow as they flow, and if someone comes into your life to love you, then let them come into your life and love you, right? But don't be seeking that. Be more the spider than the wolf, because sometimes being the spider and waiting for the fly is better than running down your energies as the wolf and dying on the hill after having walked the opposite direction of the herd you're trying to, or of your quarry, right, with no direction. So anyway, I think they're a little bit going on down the wrong track with the romanticism thing. I think they would have done better to go back to look at romanticism in the superficial ways that we have obsessed and turned actual romance and turned actual love into a superficial pursuit and seeking of this fulfillment, in which we can be manipulated, in which we can be put in places, in positions that aren't to our benefit, right? So that's why the master does not seek fulfillment. The master will see the potential in the emptiness and celebrate the fact that so many new things will come to fill the emptiness. That potential is there, right? So I think that's something that I think we have been lured into this false sense of instant gratification, that we should be able to attain that, and when we don't, that things are awry, and because we seek fulfillment, we will either manipulate others or we can be manipulated to that end. All right, what do we got? All right, so Paul Tillich. All right, status. Yes, faith. Again, going back to Lao Tzu, no need for faith if you embrace the what's it called? The Tao, the way things are, the flow state. Become that which you are, you participate in, right, and engulf yourself in that. Of course, there's still things that you have to think about for the future, but worrying about those things isn't going to help. Like, again, like worrying about the Tetris block doesn't change what block comes next. You have to just deal with what you have, and then when it comes along, and hopefully you do the right thing, and it's not too late. Okay. We need to be ultimately concerned with each other, and I find the proper definition and application of faith. Incel movement is scary, yes. We don't have to. Who cares about typos? This is live chat, man. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Okay, great. Good night, Michael W. Please, yes, do jump onto the archives. So, 10:20. We did start a little bit late. We're almost done with the video. I want to just get through this real quick. I know I've been sort of long-winded, but I mean, I am stealing someone's videos, so I do want to, be able to comment on it and use this Creative Commons thing to its full extent. All right, here we go. So the media, I 100% back this one. This one, I think they are hitting the nail on the head.
Prestige and a huge place in our lives. But it routinely directs our attention to things that scare, worry, panic, and enrage us, while denying us agency or any chance for effective personal action. It typically attends to the least admirable sides of human nature, without a balancing exposure to normal good intentions, responsibility, and decency. At its worst, it edges us towards mob justice. The cure would be news that focused on presenting solutions rather than generating outrage, that was alive to systemic problems rather than gleefully emphasizing scapegoats or emblematic monsters, and that would regularly remind us that the news we most need comes from our own lives and direct experiences. 6. Perfectibility. Modern societies stress that it is within our remit to be profoundly content.
Okay, so the media, yes, 100%. One of the things we have to remember is that the media is, it's less about left-wing and right-wing media and more about corporations, right? Corporate media. What is the intent even of right-wing media, right? What is the intent of that? The intent of those corporations is to make money, right? Um, the intent is to earn cash, right? It's not to tell you the truth. One thing that I like to emphasize over to bring perspective to the issue we're having with media is the notion that the truth is hard to find. Even the people that care about you the most, sometimes they won't tell you the truth, right? How hard is it to get the truth out of strangers, out of even your closest friends sometimes? Why would you ever think the media would simply give you the truth? If they're not getting paid to give you that truth, then they're not going to do it, right? Unless you think, for whatever reason, if you think that they will, please tell me, please elaborate, right? You could say, oh, I'm going to make a business model off of the truth. Well, what if the business model for the truth makes a lot less money for the business model of not the truth? How viable is your corporation? Right? You could say, oh, well, I'm going to start a nonprofit. Okay, please do. Please do that. Because there aren't enough. And plus, here's the thing. As a nonprofit, are you going to have enough capital to buy out the major media conglomerates? There's only a few major media companies that own everything that you hear and see. So how would you know even what's real or not real? It's whatever they tell you. And remember, the truth is hard to come by. Even the people who love you the most will withhold the truth from you. So why, in God's green earth, yes, God, why the fuck would you believe the media about anything? Now, there are some people who have a, intrinsic motivation. Like, they want to speak truth to power. That's just in them. It's like some people just want to go hunting and kill stuff, and it's like they don't know how to explain it. They just love it. I just know people that are like that. They're like just want to go hunt and kill animals. They don't want to do it in a mean way. They actually really they look at it as a science. They have respect for the animal. They don't even want to eat it though. They just obsess. I mean, go to Utah. These people are all over the place. They obsess over the action of hunting an animal to hunt their quarry, their prey, or whatever, right? That's just something that's ingrained in their head that they want to do. Intrinsic. They would probably do it for free all day, all night. If they had a chance to do that all day, all the time, they would probably do that all day, all the time. Right? If they had some independent money or whatever, right? So some people are intrinsically drawn to telling people the truth, to speaking truth to power. That exists. But do you think those people get into the place where the obfuscation occurs, where the blanket gets put over your face, where the gauze or whatever gets put over your eyes where you can't see the real world? Right? Those guys don't get hired. Right? That's what we're talking about. This is a systemic issue because they're just going to kick them out. And you probably have seen this where someone breaks a big story that's controversial and they kick them out. Oh, you're not supposed to talk about that. These are the people that pay our paychecks. Right? If your company's running Bayer commercials or Monsanto commercials, do you think they're going to talk shit on Bayer or Monsanto? Probably not. Bayer owns Monsanto now. I don't know if you guys knew that, but whatever. Anyway, all right, last one. I think it was perfection. I'm going to rewind it back a little bit. Here we go.
Own lives and direct experiences. 6. Perfectibility. Modern societies stress that it is within our remit to be profoundly content, sane, and accomplished. As a result, we end up loathing ourselves, feeling weak, and sensing that we've wasted our lives. A cure would be a culture that endlessly promotes the idea that perfection is not within our grasp, that being mentally slightly, and at points very unwell, is an inescapable part of the human condition, and that what we need, above all, are good friends with whom we can sit and honestly discuss our real fears and vulnerabilities. The forces of psychological distress in our world are currently much wealthier and more active than the needed cures. We deserve tender pity for the price we have to pay for being born in modern times. But more hopefully, cures are now open to us, individually and collectively, if only we recognize with sufficient clarity the sources of our true anxieties and sorrows.
Did you know the School of Life is a real place, with classes, events, and a shop? Visit our website to learn more.
Felt sort of obligated to let them plug their little ending there. So, School of Life, check them out. Man, I'm getting sort of sweaty in this place. Gotta turn the AC off so that it doesn't make too much noise in the shop studio. Sorry, someday we will have a legit, awesome studio, and it just won't have the same charm as the old Boyd, and all the OGs are going to complain, but it's the only way for us to go scale out. That's just something that's going to happen. Be prepared for that. Be prepared. And by the way, let's try to spread the word about the show so we can get people jumping in. Look at the live chat. We've got a lot of good input on the chat and a lot of good insights. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about real quick, we did talk about the modern world, but I wanted to discuss the national suicide epidemic. So there's definitely something going on. I don't know exactly how to analyze it. I mean, I don't have per se the will, skill, or time to actually do all of this. However, there is some analysis available for us right here. So, national suicide epidemic, according to the CDC, America faces unprecedented numbers. And here's a little chart. I mean, of course, charts make things easier for us to see. And here we go. Yearly suicide rate. So you can see there's a major spike that happens as we leave 2010 and we start getting closer and closer to the modern era, to contemporary times. I mean, that's 2016 is the end of this graph, supposedly. And so what is causing this? I would be curious to see what the suicide epidemic was in the late 70s. I wonder if that had anything to do with AIDS or with, I don't know, maybe the war, Vietnam War, PTSD. We have who's at risk of suicide, crosses gender, age, ethnic lines, death in the U.S. So there's a bunch of different. Here you can see this chart. It's a little bit. I mean, it takes a second to look at what it's trying to say, but so you have your ages on the bottom. Hold on, let me make sure you guys can see the full screen that I'm trying to show you. Yeah, you got your ages at the bottom, 10 to 14. Number one cause of death is unintentional injury. Number two is suicide. So all the way from 10 to 14, from 10 to 44, right? 10 to 34. The number two cause of death is suicide. So I mean that's a pretty big deal. So there are a number of things that are, I think, behind this, but this is what who is this? This is Relias Academy. Suicide resource for healthcare for professionals. I don't really know much about these guys. It seems like they're supposedly citing CDC statistics. Um, but let's take a look at what they're saying. So I'm going to read this out for our audio only listeners. Studies have also found that there is a high disparity with suicide rates when it comes to race and ethnicity. According to Suicide Prevention Resource Center, the suicide. Anyway, the rate of suicide among American Indians slash native Alaska natives was 21.39 per 100,000, and the rate of suicide among non-Hispanic whites was 18.5. From there, there's a dramatic drop-off. Suicide rate is 7% among Asian slash Pacific Islanders, while the rate for Hispanics is 6.38, and rate for African Americans is lowest at 6.35. So it goes on to talk about, and I've heard this before too, that the important note, or important to note, that the group of people most at risk, it says, are middle-aged white men. Though it does seem to me that the most high percentage of people at risk are Native Americans. But if we're talking about, excuse me, if we're talking about sheer number, just because white people are the majority of the population, and therefore white men comprise of a pretty large chunk of the population, and white men ages 45 to 54 apparently seem to be committing suicide at a high rate. So it's saying 70% of suicides happen among white middle-aged men, 90% of which are from lower socioeconomic classes. So, here they're saying experts are theorizing that there are a number of factors at play that contribute to this. Many reference an idea called hegemonic masculinity. Well, I think there's a racial connection to it as well. I don't know if they didn't put any. Hegemonic masculinity does not necessarily explain the white part. I think they need to, unless hegemonic is trying hegemonic by white hegemonic they need to put white in there if they're going to say hegemonic. Hegemony or hegemony, I don't know what you probably say it both ways. It basically means to have control over, to be the one control. Like, for instance, the United States can be looked at as a hegemonic empire, or having hegemony in a certain region. So like in the Americas, the United States, well, in the whole world really, the United States has for the most part hegemony, right? With the exception of like within Russia borders, or China, or these major powers within their borders. But if China were to try to do anything like, I don't know, invade Japan, the United States would basically have full controlling power of that area, so that it just wouldn't happen. So you could say that the U.S. has hegemony over the Pacific. Now, of course, China hates that idea, but whatever. Anyway, so this idea comes from this notion that white middle-aged men have a social stereotype and standard they feel obligated to live up to. These expectations are unrealistic, at least now. Maybe when racism was even more rampant and white people had even more privilege than now, it has become unrealistic, and the world around them is changing. This is what they were afraid of in the first place, to be honest with you. When you talk to, I've been around these white people, these scared old white men. I've been around them. They're my dad. They're my dad's friends. They're my teachers from high school. There's in Oklahoma these racist assholes that were the head of that were the coach of the wrestling team, that were the principal, that were openly, well, not openly. They were openly racist to other white races, but they were not openly racist, of course, in general society, right? I'm white enough. He looks white enough. Whatever. He doesn't care, right? And, talk about N word and this and that and whatever this whatever that. Next thing you know, they're talking about who's gonna be captain, who's not gonna be captain. Over my dead body, is he gonna be captain? Right? So now, when you are living in a situation where you don't automatically get picked because you look like the guy with the most power, or the guy making the decisions, now some of these folks have had to deal with that, so sort of had to deal with facing life without the extra privilege of all of those socioeconomic little pegs or nodules that they used to get to cling on to. And now, possibly now, to some degree, really, at the end of the day, it's a class struggle. And the capitalists don't really give a shit if you're white. They just want to make money off your ass. But white people, throughout the history, white men especially, specifically white men, have been manipulated by capitalists to do their bidding. And here they are, in a situation where they are seeing the effects of the capitalist economy all around them. They don't want to admit it because they have faith in capitalism and they have faith in their leaders, the probably old white men that they respect and listen to and honor the words of. And these people believe a certain set of ideals, and it doesn't matter if they can articulate them or not, because they have faith that Milton Friedman has figured this out, that Ben Shapiro has figured it out, that Dave Rubin, of all people, have figured this out, and it'll work out. Because at the end of the day, I don't have to really know, because people smarter and more financially literate and better than me at economics, they have said stuff, and I listen to them, and when they say stuff, that means, and I say what they say, then that means I'm right. Right? They are looking towards people on the quote-unquote conservative, the Thomas Sowells, the again Milton Friedman, the F.A. Hayek's, the Mises of the world that espouse this sort of straw man argument about the free market versus a controlled market by the government. I'm like, I don't even want to talk about that. I'm talking about how we shouldn't be allowed to rent people anymore. We said we don't want to, we're not allowed to own people anymore, but we never said you're not allowed to rent people anymore. And that is where our problem lies, even for middle-aged white men. Now, if they would have just figured this shit out a long time ago, then they wouldn't have the same socioeconomic problems that they have now. And this issue of race and all this shit wouldn't even be as much of an issue at all if we had moved into this a different paradigm where people were guaranteed equity and democratic control of the places where they work and sustain their lives. Right? This fundamental change in society will have a ripple effect that is beyond our comprehension, right? And we really need to focus on that. I think that is the crux of our problem. The capitalist realism that we're in right now, that the fact that the workers have no control over the means of production, that you can trade your life for the organization and receive nothing but the wage that you're forced to seek. You have no alternative. The libertarians never answer the question, what alternative do you have to exploitation if you don't already have resources? There is none. And they will lie to your face and tell you there is, but there isn't, right? And as long as we keep obscuring reality and not looking at the the things that are happening to our brothers and sisters, until we realize the reality of the situation, it'll never get fixed. And that's something that I think, that's why I have this show. Right, and that's why I'm hoping that you guys, looks like we still have 2 people watching. For those of you still on from the archives, look, get this word out, get this channel out. We need more people involved in this fellowship of truth, this fellowship together. The fact that we can just sit here and talk about controversial issues together without fear, right? That we can just dig down and get to the core of whatever it is we need to discuss, right? All right, so it is now 10:40 and I think it's about that time. So like, subscribe, it all helps the what you call it? What's the thing that what's it called? The thing that makes the decisions. The word escapes me. Everyone uses algorithm. Oh, stupid algorithm. Everybody wants to use the buzzword algorithm. But anyway, yes, the algorithm. Like, subscribe, because that helps with that, and so you'll get some fresh blood in, so we get some new perspectives. But also, send this out, spam it out to your friends, family, and all those people, especially your crazy uncle, your crazy aunt, or these teenagers, or whoever wants to argue with you and you're getting pissed off at them, or whatever. I don't know, send them my way. Let's talk. Let them get it off their chest. Or maybe they have a really great way of articulating a counter to my argument. Or if you have a counter, put it in the comments. Even if you're checking on the archive, you can write it in the comments. I will address it on the following show or one of these days, depending on the comment. So put a good comment in there and all that stuff. In the meantime, in between time, of course, remember, we've got Seprock Beats, link in the description. He's going to be taking us out. A track called Rooftops. Hopefully it's not too super loud. But, I mean, it's as loud as it is. Alright, so, yes, y'all. It has been a great episode. Thank you all for tuning in. And again, spread the word. We need to figure out the truth. We can only do it together. It's not about me. It's about us. Let's make this happen. All right. Until next time, I will see y'all later. And whenever that is, I guess here in a second, because we don't have a live editor. And it's now.
Nah.